All right, let's get going. So we're going to try out this working group captain thing. So what we want to do, and you've probably heard this already, we've given you documents on it, etc. But what we want to do is start allowing different community groups to have access and more ingrained control over certain aspects of the code base. That means that we are going to be giving everybody in here, and a few people who aren't in here, merge rights. But that also means that we want to be able to see what our goals are for a given release. Now, internally, we're still in the process of, hey, there's America.
Hey, sorry for being late.
No, you're good. We're just happy to see you. We're in the process of cleaning up the Neon release. Now, with the Sodium release, this is the first release that we no longer need to support Python 2. So far, we've been of the mind that it was going to be Python 3.4 and above. Python 3.4 is getting dropped all over the place. So that's all something that we probably need to figure out for the Sodium release. But the main thing that I want to ask is that we find out what the feature sets are that you all want for these certain areas that you've been captains over. What we want to do is publish a doc or publish a collection of documents into the docs that, and this is how a lot of projects do it, that just outline that our development goals for the Sodium release for Mac and networking and Windows and cloud and SSH and testing and release are these things. And then as we progress, we set up the dates when we want to make sure that we have feature freeze and see what we can do to make all that happen. And so, I mean, that's kind of the high level in a nutshell. So if we look at it, I want to start with, let's figure out what our feature enhancement and fixed goals are for the Sodium release. After that, we need to figure out when we're going to have working group meetings. Now, we've said once a month.
Yeah, once a month, and it starts with the 15th of June. So that's when we kick off the working groups.
Okay. I will be in these, but I'm just going to be in here to endorse the fact that you guys are the captains. I'm not going to be stepping on toes. I mean, I might pop in every now and then and just say, hey, you know, we did XYZ for this reason. I'm perfectly fine if you change XYZ, or these are some things to consider. But, I mean, the whole idea will be that you guys get a drive, not me. But I am here to support you in any way I can, and to validate that, yep, you guys for this release are in charge of making sure that your respective areas are as fantastic as can be.
Maybe we can take a moment to just get the team, if they want to clarify on the role before we jump into the details of what we want to prioritize in the meetings and so on. Is everybody familiar with the captain role? Is everybody?
Yeah, and that's, I guess I should ask, does anybody have any questions about what the role entails?
I guess it would be okay to have some kind of introduction and how we would work and collaborate with the other members of each group, and where do we meet, how do we communicate and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Actually, yeah, let's do some introductions. I think a lot of you already know each other. But yeah, let's start by just going around the room here. And Wesley, you mind starting? Let everybody know who you are.
Yeah, I'm Wesley Whetstone. Fairly new to Salt, probably compared to most folks in the room. Probably been using it for a little over a year and a half, close to 2 years. We use it to manage the laptops at Square, so all the Macs that get up and roam around. A little bit tricky that way, but Salt does a fantastic job. But yeah, based out of San Francisco, California. So.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Mirka.
Yeah, it's Mircha. Yeah, I'm Mircha, and I've been using Salt for about 4 years now. I've been automating networks. I've been using Salt with the famous Salt proxies to automate some of the biggest networks previously at Cloudflare, and now just started a couple of months ago at DigitalOcean.
Fantastic. Since Wayne, you're going to be working with Mirka.
Mircha.
Mircha.
Pleasure to meet you, Mircha.
Mircha,
I'm gonna keep
sorry,
saying your
sorry.
name 20 times. It's only so that Tom remembers how to say it. Mircha, 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 Mircha.
That's fine. Everyone does that.
Man, I just got called out.
Mircha, Mircha, Mircha.
We've said it the other many times. Now we have to say it the right way so many more times.
Mircha, yes. Okay.
Chat sound. You combine your lips together.
Yeah, I've heard all the possible combinations.
Well, when I first read your name, I thought it said Mercia, so I think of a couple of ways. Wayne, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Wayne Werner. I actually just joined Salt back in January. I've been using Salt since I think the 0 point something days, mostly just as a hobby, but you know, I did actually get to replace a very poorly maintained wiki with a Salt setup at a couple of jobs previous. So that was super nice. Made a huge difference. So that was really cool. And finally, I'd applied to work at Salt a couple times before, but finally the stars aligned, and yeah, now here we are.
Fantastic. Thanks, Wayne.
And Wayne does not have a barber shop that he runs on the side, just for the record. He's still yet to disclose what that big, beautiful chair behind him is, but
It's an inversion table. Stretching out your back.
Can't wait to see the meeting where you're in it.
yes, right? The new Iron Throne.
Okay, Shane?
Yeah, my name's Shane Lee. I've been with Salt since January 2015. Originally hired to be the Windows guy, and I'm still pretty much the Windows guy here. So I'll be heading up the Windows work group.
Nice to meet you, Shane.
Megan?
Hey, my name's Megan. I fell in love with Salt when I was a DevOps engineer about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and then had to jump on the opportunity to come work for Salt, and have loved it ever since. So yeah, that's me. Oh, and I'm out of Orlando, Florida.
Okay, Mihai?
Yeah, I'm Mihai. I'm working for SUSE on SUSE Manager, and this is an application that we developed, and this is using Salt as well as other things. So yeah, and I'm probably the other person that can pronounce Mircha correctly.
I'm sorry.
I bet you do.
Wave in there that we didn't have the Mircha. They're like, yeah, so we have
Yeah, so nice to meet you, Mircha, and the others.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Pablo?
Yeah, hi everybody. Yeah, I'm Pablo Suarez. I'm also part of the SUSE Manager team at SUSE, and we are basically focused on developing SUSE Manager and also Uni, which is its upstream project now. As you know, this is all working with Salt under the hood. So yeah, you probably know us from doing a lot of PRs to Salt, asking something. So yeah. Nice to see you all, and also people that I didn't have the opportunity to meet so far. So, hi.
Yep, good to have you in here, Pablo.
I'm based also in the Canary Island, by the way. So.
Yeah. I think that's where we need to have the meeting.
Yeah.
Which one of them, Pablo?
Sorry?
Which one of the islands?
I'm based on Tenerife.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah. Have you been there, by the way?
Lanzarote.
Oh, that's another great one. And we also have here today Jochen, which is also part of our squad, our SALT team at SUSE. So we are currently 3 people there. Since Mihai and I were acting as captain and also vice captain from the testing and release working group. Also, Jochen will be probably involved here since we are sharing more or less responsibilities here in the, let's say, in the daily work of the SALT squad here at SUSE. So that's also why he is also joining us today. So Jochen.
Yes, so I've been sneaking in today, sorry. I hope you don't mind.
No, don't mind at all. Let's see. And Kavya?
I'm Kavya. I'm the product manager for the open source team. I joined SALT last July, and then I moved to the open source team from December of last year. And I'm based out of Utah. And I'm your point of contact if you need some information about the working groups. And I'll also be facilitating some of the working group meetings, initially at least to get that started out. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.
So Kavya has done a fantastic job, and she's done most of the footwork to get a lot of this organized. And Kavya is going to be helping to facilitate when your working group meetings are, so that's just a little less work that you guys have to do, and to try and make sure that, we're able to get things running smoothly. And so she's here to just make your lives a little easier along these lines. Really, the goal is that as working group captains, you're able to focus mostly on code and less on organizational minutia. And so Kavya is going to be a fantastic asset, as she already has been. And I think the last person in here to introduce is Mo.
Yeah. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm Mo. I joined SALT about 2 months ago from IBM. I've just like the stories from several of you have come in contact with SALT about 5 years or so ago, mainly when we were building up our cloud infrastructure and we needed some of the underpinning for standing up much of that environment. So SALT stood out ahead of every other environment and platform that we used and fell in love with it since then. Joined the team to lead the engineering group and very much excited to be part of the open side of it. Younger age, I worked with the Java, early days of what open source was and what became the Java Technology Center and Eclipse. And then more recently on the OpenWhisk project, if anybody is familiar with that. So much of the team that has been leading it and governing it had come from a group that I had the privilege of working with. And I think this idea of work groups and captains and leaders is a great best practice from many of the open projects. And as Tom said, we're very thrilled to have everybody here, take up this position and really take on this great opportunity to lead us into sort of the next wave of changes, enhancements, and community activities. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, and I should also say that Mo has been instrumental in helping us get this put together. So a lot of the work behind the scenes has been Mo and Kavya doing a fantastic job there. Okay. Kavya, where do we need to go from here?
The responsibilities of the captains. I think that's what we wanted to discuss.
Okay. So we've gone over this a few times. Basically, it's working group meetings, trying to mentor other contributors. The real goal here is that a captain doesn't need to be in seat more than a few releases. that they would have other people who are participants in the community that they would be mentoring and that they would help become better contributors, so that they would be able to endorse others for the captain's chair for future releases. We kind of don't want people to be a captain more than 3 times in a row, so that we are encouraging this constant nurturing of the larger community. We also don't want to make it so that it's just, you know, a salt stack show. So you may have noticed.
Pablo, did you have a question?
No, sorry. I was just saying okay, let's say.
Okay.
So you've probably noticed that 2 of our captains are salt stack employees and 4 are not, which I think is fantastic. I think that's probably a good mix for us just starting out. And I should also mention that hopefully within a release or so, we've got people in the community who are sufficiently engaged in these areas that they can also take over the captain's seat. Okay. With merge rights, we are going to ask that you guys are paying close attention to the PRQ. And I should say, don't use the merge rights just as a way to merge your own code.
Dang it.
You should certainly still be getting your code merged by somebody other than yourself. I mean, that's generally best practices for software development, right? We still need code to be approved, or PRs to be approved by multiple people before it's merged. We're still going to follow those guidelines. And I was actually going to ask Megan if she can go over the merge guidelines sometime before we're done here. And yeah, then the last responsibility will be, again, these working group meetings. So merging code, merge rights, working group meetings, and helping us define what the feature sets are under these respective umbrellas that we want to achieve. The other thing that I want to acknowledge is that the different areas that we're looking at are likely going to have some very different goals and very different kind of flows as to how they're going to be working. I mean, when we come back and we look at networking, for instance, I suspect that a sizable amount of that work is going to be building in integrations to more network devices, whereas we come and look at testing and release, and there may be some fundamental changes that we want to make with respect to how testing and release processes work, so that we can streamline that and better involve the community in that release process. And so we are going to need to kind of go over the minutia of each one of these in all of our introductory working groups. Okay, before we hop on to the next section, does anybody have any questions about that? Questions, comments, concerns, rebuttals?
Tom, I think as part of what you mentioned around the mentoring and the coaching, one of the things that the Collective Soul team, of course, has been very much focused on, which the captains will hopefully carry through, is the responsibility for the quality of the code that's coming in. So being able to look at what people are contributing and feeling comfortable and frankly just confident to guide those who are contributing towards that higher standard. Because ultimately, as that code gets merged back in and you're comfortable that it's meeting the sort of qualities you need, both in terms of the functional aspects, but also how it's structured, how it's documented, etc. I think that's another great contribution that the captains can really play a role with.
Definitely.
And to add to that, I think there was a question about how do we collaborate. I think Tom highlighted pretty much how do you collaborate within your own working groups, and to collaborate with maybe the captains of the other working groups. We have created a channel in Slack, which are just for the working group captains. So that would be an opportunity for you to discuss what's happening within the other working group, leverage some of the best practices which the other groups has.
One of the other things is that that captain's area is a nice place to just say, hey, can somebody else get eyes on this pull request? Even those day-to-day tasks definitely welcome to discuss that instead of Slack.
Sounds good.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Somebody asked where we'll meet, where we're going to do the meetings.
So
earlier.
I'm scheduling the meetings for each of the working groups, at least initially, and I'll be part of those meetings. And this is to help us kind of set the agenda for each of the meetings and then communicate the agenda with the rest of the team members, and also even record that and kind of get the ball rolling in terms of maintaining like a set of, so that we kind of can repeat these set of activities for each of the working groups and establish some benchmarks that we will follow in the future meetings. But I'll be scheduling those meetings, and we are kicking off the working groups starting from June 15th. So each of the working groups meetings would be on a date post that.
And yeah, they'll be over Zoom.
And we'll be announcing the working group participants tomorrow. But in the meanwhile, since you wouldn't have seen your own group members, is that something which the captains are interested to see?
Oh yeah, we should definitely share with everybody the people who signed up to be participants.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, my thinking along these lines, and I'd love some feedback here, is that for working group participants, that would be just kind of open and public, that we would create working group channels in the community Slack, and that those working group channels would allow anybody to join. We're not necessarily, again, mandating that you're hanging out in Slack all day long. That can be really onerous. But it would probably be something worth checking in occasionally onto. And then making the working group meetings open and public, so that anyone would be able to come in. The other thing that I want to emphasize is, especially with these first working group meetings, some of you may have more experience conducting these sorts of things than others. And I'm perfectly happy to do anything I can to support you, and SaltStack will do anything we can as a company to support you. If you want to reach out to me via email, or if you want to reach out to me beforehand and have a Zoom to just do some preparation, I would love to do that. And if you don't, if you're like, hey, I got this, then I'm good too. Really what I'm saying is I just want to support you guys as best I can and make sure that you've got everything lined up. And so if you ever need anything and you want to, please feel free to just email me directly, and I'll be more than happy to get back in touch. And I'm more than happy to hop on a Zoom one-on-one with anybody in here to go over any concerns or questions, or if you just need help organizing your thoughts, or even if you just need to bounce off somebody what you're thinking along the lines of getting this work done. I am here to do everything I can to help things be smooth for you. So please, please, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And the same goes for Kavya.
Okay, thank you very much. So if I understood correctly, there will be one meeting per group, like an introductory meeting that will happen after 15th of June, right?
Yep, and we will coordinate with you to make sure that the time works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, yeah. And then each group will discuss more about the scope of the group in this introductory meeting, right? And also we will meet with the rest of the participants and discuss.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, I don't have any other questions. That's fine with me.
Okay, well, and I guess I should ask, I mean, does anyone think, Does anyone have any questions about the scope of what they want to do as a captain, or what they can do, or what's expected of them?
At least for me, it's not entirely clear what the goals would be, for example, for my squad, the squad that I'm in. But I guess this will be clearer when we will have this first meeting, right? Then we will really define what's expected and the rest of the details. So I'm fine for now, I guess. I will also think about what I would want to achieve. Probably we could also do that meanwhile, but I guess you will basically dictate the direction of the groups, right?
Well, no, Mihai, that is a fantastic question. I don't want to be the one expressly dictating direction. What I want to be able to do here is sit down with everybody and have an open conversation about where we are, what we have done, and what those goals could look like. So, I mean, the more that I'm thinking about this, I think it would probably make sense. There's a few areas in here where I think that we should probably have better a pre-meeting with just the group captain and the people inside of SaltStack who have been working on those specific areas. And so, and again, for certain areas, if we look at this from a Windows perspective, I think we've got Shane here and we're good to go. We look at this from a testing and release perspective, Mihai and Pablo, we really should sit down and have a dedicated meeting before we have the working group meeting with your team, with Megan, with Pedro and a few others from our side, so that we can really just go over and say, look, this is the process we have been following. This is what our current testing resources and methods look like, and let's brainstorm how we can make this whole thing better, right? And I think that would be a very, very productive meeting and a very smart thing for us to do before we have the working group meeting, because at that point we're going to be publicly saying, hey, here's a bunch of our goals, let's get some feedback. When we come back and look at, let's see, networking in Mac, it would probably make a lot of sense. See, now I'm afraid to say his name. Mircea.
Yay!
You did it.
Yeah.
Usually I'm pretty good at pronouncing names, so I'm sorry. But Mircea, it would probably make a lot of sense also to have you sit down with Wayne and CR on our side, and so that we can map everything out there. And I guess similarly with Wesley, is there anybody that you've worked more closely with than others on the Mac stuff? Personally, I've just been further away. I haven't done anything there.
I've worked with Megan and Shane quite a bit already, and I seem to get tagged on most Mac pull requests now anyway. So yeah, I think we're pretty good.
Okay. And so I guess the only other thing I'd like to ask here, because I've asked for questions a bunch of times, we've gotten a few, but a lot of crickets. If we can go around really quick and kind of get a high level of where your thoughts are at this point as to what you want to accomplish in the Sodium release. And so I think I'll start with, who should I throw under the bus first as the example? Shane is exactly the person I was thinking.
All right, well, so during the first meeting, I was planning on kind of getting a feel for what people's pain points are with Salt and on Windows, if it's the slowness, if it's something we're not supporting, and maybe try to set some goals there, what we think we can accomplish before Sodium, and kind of make some assignments, who's going to take what, and who's going to lead out on it. And I was thinking, for me, I guess it's the Windows slowness and getting onto Python 3 on Windows, all the Unicode issues. There's probably some LGPO support we need to add in addition to maybe Active Directory. I don't know, the meeting will kind of determine, I think, where we decide to go. But that was my plan.
Okay.
Is that deep enough? Do I need to go in more depth?
No, that's great.
No, usually that's how it starts. Getting a feel from the work group members is an important thing. And I'm sure Kavya as well has a stash of some of the things that we've observed between herself and Megan from the community members. And I think we ought to reflect on that. If I may just suggest something around the Windows one, because that's another interesting dynamic around how the captains will work with each other, because there's some interdependencies in some of the areas. Testing, for example, on the Windows side and working through that had come up a couple of times before as well. So, working, Mihai, between yourself and the Windows side and understanding what best practices we may be able to leverage might be a good sort of connection point around areas that intersect.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Wesley, what are your thoughts for the Mac group?
Well, as most of you probably know, macOS is a pretty special snowflake. It does a lot of things really differently, and probably things you're not used to. Unfortunately, I've had the privilege of working on macOS for the better part of 7 or 8 years now. But I think there's just some macOS specific stuff that we already have in like a different open source library with just like custom modules and states and whatnot that I think the first probably go around is to take those and get them into core and make sure they're like Pi 3 happy and all that kind of fun stuff.
Well, that sounds absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Mircea, what are you thinking?
Oh yeah, it's pretty tough because there are a bunch of things. For example, there's an issue with the proxy minions. Any flavor of proxy minion that is not multiprocessing. This has some deeper background. The idea is that not all the proxy minions can use multiprocessing like a regular minion, so it has to use multi-threading. That means every command runs in a separate thread, but within the same process, which leads to a pretty nasty memory leak. And I've been looking into it for a long time. I can't find it, so I'm hoping working together with SaltStack will hopefully fix it at some point, because it's the proxy minion starts consuming about 80 megs and gets to 200 megs or even more, which is not quite convenient. Yeah, this would be a first, and also I'm hoping to get some collaboration with the network vendors to convince them somehow to hopefully contribute themselves to SaltStack.
That's fantastic. And on the memory issue, I should comment that Wayne, I don't know if you're aware of this one, but Chad has been looking into putting together some memory tracking tools for Salt that should be able to help on this. So probably want to sync back a little bit with Chad McMorrow on some of those as well. So yeah, no, we can definitely help track those issues down there.
Yeah, I couldn't. I failed. I didn't get anything yet.
Okay, thank you, Mircea.
Yeah, of course.
Let's see, and Megan?
Yeah, so the really big one is trying to follow up with the Python 2 to Python 3 salt enhancement proposal that I submitted a while ago. So that would probably be a big part of the sodium release for SSH. Another big one that I would like to go is to go through the backlog of all the issues on salt SSH, which just from my experience of triaging, there's quite a few that we could probably tackle and make it a little bit more stable. And then just similar to Shane, kind of get the feel from the participants and see if there's not something else we can add to that list.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, and Megan, I mean, just to get it more in the open, I mean, we've talked a little bit about potentially making Salt SSH its own kind of standalone project. I've floated, I mean, just so this group is aware, this isn't a finite decision or anything at this point, but I've floated the idea of kind of compartmentalizing certain parts of Salt in the long run. We recently open sourced a project that I've been working on for kind of slowly for a few years called POP, which is the, let's say, next generation version of the salt loader. And so there's a few areas where we might want to consider external compartmentalization of a project. And I think that for Salt SSH in particular, that's something that's definitely worth considering. All right. And so, Mihai, what are you thinking on test and release?
Yeah, so I don't really have a plan, but maybe some ideas. So I think we already are diverging a little bit here because we at SUSE we are running the tests in a different way, and we are using Docker containers, and we are more like SUSE oriented, while you are maybe testing, like the default is to test on Ubuntu, right? So we would like to maybe achieve the same like coverage when we are speaking about SUSE and its operating systems, and have more stable releases in our context. But of course, we have to talk about it and see what your requirements are and what are our requirements, and yeah, agree on a path here. So that's why I cannot really have a plan right now. We have to synchronize, I guess. We already had a couple of meetings where I've presented the Salt Toaster that we are using. I don't think I have convinced you, but I can present it one more time. Maybe that will help. But I'm not sure it will cover fully your requirements. So that's something that we would have to decide. And we are also open to change. So I guess it's an open discussion.
Yeah. Also,
Okay,
yeah, for adding. Yeah, so this is maybe on the testing side. Yeah, as Mihai was saying, we are using the toaster. We do testing on Docker containers, so it would be nice maybe to see how we can both, maybe integrate this and the way that you are doing, also with the way we are testing Salt. Yeah, just came up with a nicer and better solution that cover all the cases, using PyTest and so on. And then on the release side, well, you know that SUSE now has Salt as part of the base system of SLE 15. So that also means that we will need to also have a very defined, let's say, a way of releasing, and also, yeah, let's say, coordinate a lot here. So it would be nice also to make a clear definition how we are releasing, how will be the workflow. Yeah, also and also tie this with the testing part of the Salt. So I guess that this will be one of the steps that we would like to achieve for the Neon. Yeah, for the Sodium. Sorry.
No, that's fantastic, and we've put a lot of effort recently into trying to move towards a containerized testing system and move towards PyTest and finally get rid of the testing system that I put together a long time ago. And so that we can better compartmentalize those tests so that they can be run in parallel in a containerized environment. And so I definitely think that there's a lot of convergence that we can have around Toaster. I am definitely convinced that what you're doing with Toaster is fantastic stuff. But this is also one of those places where I think it will be very beneficial. And I'll ask Kavya to put this together where, yeah, we have a meeting, particularly bringing Pedro in. He's done a lot of the work here. And a few others on the core team, especially Megan, so that we can make sure that we've got a really open communication around how that works. And then how we communicate about releases, release goals, release blockers, and things like this is also something that I think that we should probably go over. So Mihai, the thing I'm thrilled about in the way you're explaining things is that I think that we are in line. I think there's going to be some interesting places as we figure out how to really lock things up in a smooth way. And I'm thrilled that you're taking an approach of a very collaborative approach. Mihai, you've always just been beyond fantastic to work with. I'm so thrilled that we're going to be working with you more.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I feel like we're pretty much wrapped up. Is there anything else that we need to cover?
Megan had to share the merge requirements.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I posted the salt enhancement proposal in the Slack channel. I can't remember the name of the Slack channel. WG Captains. But I can kind of just summarize it, but I would love for everybody on this team especially to go and review it because it will directly impact you in terms of what is required to merge a PR. And so I can just go over it really quick. For all PRs, it requires one approval from either the core team or from any of these captains of any of the working groups. It also, I'm scrolling down. We require all tests to pass on every PR. And like Tom stated before, you cannot merge your own PR until one reviewer from the defined list above, defined list has approved it, and then you're welcome to merge it yourself. For bug fixes, we are now requiring test coverage for changes. And for features as well, test coverage for any new features that somebody is adding. Those are the big highlights of those. And then if there's an exception, like if we need to merge a PR that for some reason shouldn't need to have tests, then it will require 3 reviews to ensure that it, to make sure that it indeed does not need to have test coverage. Before it can be merged. Obviously, documentation changes do not require test coverage, so that still only lays under the 1 review rule. Let's see here. And if you run into a situation where somebody just is not willing to write a test for their PR, currently our approach is going to be is to keep the PR open for 3 months and add the needs test case label. And the idea is, I know we had mentioned this, I don't know if it's a sure thing, Kavya, that maybe we'll do some sprints together with the community to maybe tackle some of those, or you're welcome to write tests for that PR. I've already run into a situation where we really wanted the fix, so I dove in and wrote a test myself. I think that clarifies everything that's high level. But yeah, if you could please go in and review that. If you have any comments or suggestions, greatly appreciate it.
Okay. And so before we wrap up, to clearly highlight the next steps, basically there are 3, I think, items next that you can look for for the communication from me. The next would be we would have We will be announcing the working group members, so you will know who are the participants in your working group, which is tomorrow, May 30th, US time, US date. And after that, we would be syncing up each of the working group captains with some of the SALT core team members, subject matter experts. We would have those individual meetings, which would help you to set the agenda and the goals for your own working group. That's kind of the next step. And the third step would be that from June 15th onwards, we would start having these monthly meetings. I'll set them up for each of the working groups. So these are some of the 3 communication items that you can look for from me and from SALT. Any other questions do we have at this point? Okay. Looks good then. Okay.
All right, fantastic.
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize one more time before we wrap up, if there's anything I can do to help you guys, feel free to reach out directly to me. Don't be a stranger. I'm more than happy to do what I can for you. But yeah, we'll set up the meetings that we've discussed, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very
Thanks.
much. Good luck.
Okay.
Thank you.